I will say that this is speaking on behalf of the casuals of Runeterra. If you play Dreadway and Ladros in your decks, I still love you as a listener, but I don't love you as much as our other listeners.
Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 10. I'm your host, Ryan, here with your other host, Hedge.
Ahoy, matey.
All right, that wasn't scripted, and I'm disgusted.
You're welcome.
We're here. We're back. We're here. We're back.
We made it through another week of quarantine.
I know, right? It's
a little less sane.
Every day gets a lot harder than I thought. Like I'm going over that cliff because I have a touch of introvert in me, but I'm an extrovert, and I'm not used to being in that. I'm going on week 8.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm going on week 9. Sorry.
It's at least 2 months.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Like, luckily, I've spent most of my life kind of trying to embrace the introvert more.
Yeah.
Because I'm definitely more of a social butterfly.
Yeah.
So
and you have some family around you too at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I'm isolated.
You're alone. No one loves you.
And this is where nerd culture and like things like Discord come into play, because it's been great to be able to still communicate with friends, hang out, play games, hop on a video chat here and there. So you still have that little bit of interaction, because I don't do the social medias. I don't think you do much either. So it's cool to still have a little bit of touch.
Absolutely. Luckily we can still be social, even though we're all distanced at least 6
So stay safe and stay social out there. That's been this episode of Casuals.
Wrap it up. The COVID of Runeterra.
The shortest podcast ever. Housekeeping. Remember, you can listen to us anywhere. So if you don't like where you're listening to us now, change. What are you doing?
If there's somewhere that we're missing, let us know.
Exactly.
We'll go there too, and then we'll call you a liar because we told you we're everywhere.
But yeah, follow us on Twitter. That's the best way to keep up to date with episodes. I try to get the post up once everything is uploaded to all the platforms. That's at podcast COR, podcast core. And then you can also send an email if you want to contact us or play with one of our, play into one of our shenanigans that we do at the end of the episode at podcastcore@gmail.com, spelled the same way.
Yeah.
And then follow.
And you could also pay respect to our producer, Cervantes.
Yes, Cervantes is now our producer. He's been updated from pet to producer.
That was Mount. He was never a pet.
Yeah, sorry, Mount. Yes,
Cervantes is his own Poro.
His own man. But yeah, follow, short review, comment, whatever helps. Let us know if you're liking it. Getting a lot of feedback and responses on Twitter. It's cool to watch that grow and to find out, find other people who are doing their own thing, which is cool. We're starting to talk to other podcasters, which I've been listening to some of their stuff, and there's great content out there. We'll give them a shout out sooner or later. But our line for this week: so tell a friend to listen to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast before the powder keg goes off and they blow up.
Oh my! You put way too much work into this one.
I know, that was a little long.
I could hear the amount of work that you put into it, and I don't like it.
I won't stand for it.
I won't stand for it.
I'm a casual. Stay the game. So I am finally taking my brew for a spin. I've been playing it for this whole week, and essentially, I'm not giving too much away. It's Demacia Freljord, which is one reason I picked it. Haven't seen a lot of that combination, and one thing I was looking at as the meta starts to establish itself, which is what I was kind of waiting for, is the amount of chump blocking that's involved. We'll talk about the Draven aggro problem at the end that a lot of people have been talking towards. But make sure I get the credit right. Mogwai mentioned a alliance deck, and he was kind of talking about Overwhelm being an underused concept for building decks. Freljord has the most Overwhelm, and they also have that Allegiance card that gives that insane Overwhelm buff with Allegiance. And I was kind of thinking about how chump blockers are performing and what people are trying to do in the current meta, and I'm trying to counter it. And I put together this deck that essentially focuses on its Garen is a 3 of. I have 1 Fiora for an alternate win condition, and then I have 2 Ashe for the mid to end game control aspect to kind of wrap things up. And then outside of that, it focuses on Overwhelm. So you have the Allegiance package for Overwhelm, and not really playing anything too crazy outside of the standard good cards, but it's working. It's working very well. And it's just ending games because you're changing the math on people. That new 3-1 with Tough and Overwhelm at 2 is really solid. Haven't seen a lot of her yet because not a lot of people are playing her.
It's really underutilized now that a lot of people are trying to play more into the whole spider package too, to get around what we'll talk about later when we go into Draven.
Exactly. But yeah, it's been going well. I'm on version, so I version my decks. I know it's me. I'm a programmer.
So
whatever. But I'm on version like 1.2 of it, and it's been running very smooth. So I don't know. I'll probably come back next week. Probably still be playing this because I haven't got to play a lot this week. So
I'm excited to hear more about you going into it because when you were first getting excited about this deck, I was looking at it and I was just kind of like staring blankly, like, what is he doing? No one is playing Garen.
Yeah.
It's like I'm the one that's supposed to be doing the wild crazy thing.
Yeah. Dude, Garen's a beater. It's very hard to kill him right now. So it's like you can't chump block him, right? Because the more you chump block him, the closer he gets to flipping. But what do you got? I took up enough time there.
All right, so I've obviously been having a lot of fun trying to brew with the Pursuit of Perfection, which I've been having a blast with. But what I've been playing the most is something that I find quite dumb and quite delightful because, chump blocking is a lot more prevalent right now. So what I've been, my dumb idea to get around it instead of Overwhelm, it was to revisit Shen and Lux barriers and then combine it with the new card Dragon's Rage.
Oh my god.
To kick a gigantic Greenglade Caretaker into anything and one-shot someone. That's the goal. That is to hit a 30 attack Greenglade into anything and one-shot someone. Because why do trusted combos when you can do something dumb?
It's like, wait, they have a 31-31. It's the only thing on the board. What? Greenglade does.
Yeah. So to make the deck work and to actually make it playable, it's using a lot of like the core Shin and Lux barrier package stuff that already existed.
Yeah.
And then supplementing it with like the full set of like the Mage Seeker Conservator, so that way you can still get Lux to consistently get lasers.
Yes.
And then just start lasering people down. So in most of my games where I end up winning, I'm usually lasering people down. I've had like 2 times where I've gotten to just Dragon's Rage someone that wasn't expecting it.
Oh, you also have to tell the people about your achievement. That ladder up, baby.
Yeah. Well, that is not what. As soon as I did it, I switched it up. But I did. Obviously, the set is so exciting, and you can't help but trying to dig towards something that you find fun but also successful. So that first list that I shared with everybody for Quinn and Miss Fortune, I was able to grind up to gold with that list. And as soon as I hit gold, I went, all right, Pursuit of Perfection.
It's a sickness.
It's a sickness. Which right before the podcast, I did pull the Pursuit off on someone. And it was
my god!
It was just like deuces, meow meow. So I switched it right back to fun as soon as I hit gold.
Oh my gosh! Well, we got some fun, right? So let's get into the topic of this episode. Bang, bang, gang, gang, baby.
Bang, bang, gang, gang.
That's what the young people say, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yes, we are totally in touch with the younger crowd, and we have not shown our age at all.
So let's get into spells. So my spell for this one, and you can kind of guess who my champion's going to be, is more powder. More powder is not really played, but it has a concept that's being used a lot more. You're seeing it a lot more in aggro strategies, some tempo strategies as well that go a little bit closer to the mid range, where essentially more powder is a 2-cost slow spell that summons 2 powder kegs. And what powder kegs do basically is they add 1 additional damage to whatever spell or ability you play that does damage, right? Following that. So you can build them up. You can have 2, you can have 4, and until you cast a spell that does damage or do something that does damage outside of an attack, then that's when it will use the powder keg to pump it up. So very cool concept.
It's also like the first thing that we've seen in Runeterra that kind of uses the idea of like a counter.
Yeah.
Because most everything else is like more bodies, but when you are stacking up more powder kegs, it's not taking up your board space.
Exactly. So one thing here from the flavor standpoint, so everybody knows from the early days of Gangplank, I'm not really sure on how his kit looks now. I remember there was a redesign. I didn't dig into that too much, but powder kegs were kind of one of his abilities, right? And it was annoying because he lights it and it blows up and it does damage, and he could use it to control space. So in this, obviously Ryan's math is here again to save the day. So each powder keg adds 1 damage.
Oh no.
one damage per cost. So if you get 2 powder kegs, it costs 2. That's why this costs 2.
Oh no.
It's that easy.
We first reveal our ages with our title names, and now we got to reveal like our math skills.
Yeah, now we're teaching children. But yeah, and it being a slow spell, I think is the biggest part of the flavor. Obviously I'm stretching with the math always, but with the slow spell, you have to light the keg, right? That's the whole thing. It's a delayed effect, and here's the same way. To your point, I think it's cool. You hit the nail on the head of it being a sort of counter play to things, because we're used to having aura effects that just say, okay, add 1 to everything that does spell damage, add 1 spell damage or stuff like that, right? Where this one only affects the next thing you do, which means there's still some play around there, and your opponent has to play around it as well, even though you can't just waste it on a spell. You can still get baited and blow your powder keg setup, right? And that would be, that gives some more skill to it, rather than just saying, hey, everything does 1 for the rest of the round. Which is cool.
And arguably, out of all the new Bilgewater stuff, it's probably the most balanced thing they added too, because it also all the powder kegs have vulnerable on it too. So you can't just be sitting there staring at powder kegs on the opponent's board and be like, I have nothing that I can do against it.
No.
It's very good counterplay, and there's some things without counterplay that people have been abusing that I'm not for. So I'm glad I'm happy with powder kegs.
Yeah,
so I'm happy with that one.
What do you have for us from good old Bilgewater?
I also picked something that should point out to what I'll be talking about today, because the spell that I want to take a look at is gonna make it rain on these. Okay, so
once again, we date ourselves. It's funny because when you mentioned lasers, I was gonna say I'm firing my laser, and I was like, let's not date ourselves. And then we go on to make comment after comment after comment.
Let's not date ourselves as we date ourselves. Yeah, so Make It Rain is going to be a 2-mana fast spell that deals 1 damage to 3 different random enemies. So a lot of people love, my favorite meme off of this card is people showing fun interactions with Make It Rain, and they always have the tag, I got Hearthstoned. Because very little RNG elements have been seen in Runeterra, especially throughout the beta. I think there was maybe at most 2 things that was consistently RNG that people played.
Yeah. And
even if you're not running Make It Rain in your deck, it is the unique card to Miss Fortune. So every Miss Fortune deck is going to have at least 1 Make It Rain happen once in their lifetimes. But it is the Hearthstone effect. 1 damage to 3 things, and you have no control over where it's going. And I love the interaction that it has with the powder kegs.
Mhm.
And as annoying as it is to be on the receiving end of it, I do love that people have discovered like that interaction with Ezreal, where if it hits 3 things, that's 3 ticks to leveling up Ezreal.
Yeah.
Like it's a fun card without it being too oppressive
Yeah.
in reality. So I Miss Fortune's got to have a good spell. She's
Yeah.
got to look good. She's got to have a good
Of
spell.
course.
Yeah.
She's one of the favorites.
Go get it. Go get
She's
it.
one of
Girl.
the queens.
Yes,
Yes,
Queen.
queen. So we're gonna hop into followers, and my follower naturally is the Dreadway. Haven't seen it played much yet, because I don't like games going that long. And the thing about it is, it's definitely a game ender. We talked. I feel like ever since we did our first tutor card, every card we've done since that point has been a tutor card.
Yep.
We have another tutor card, but the tutor part of it is irrelevant. It's essentially, and the funny thing is, this has a tutor built in, and it's still more balanced than Ladro's.
Yes.
And so essentially, the Dreadway is a 9-cost 4/8 that has Fearsome, and on play draws a Gangplank from your deck, and then doubles all damage dealt by allies. So naturally, you want to play this on attack, right? That's the best place to play it, so you can just get the effect right away. Doubling the damage of anything is just a nightmare. And at 9, you should have somewhat of a board if the game's going that far, unless a sweep just happened on the previous turn, like a Runation or something like that. And even if not, if they Runation and then it's your turn, you play Dreadway, you're still winning. Like that's the whole thing is it's to finish the game. And the Gangplank it tutors for you is just in case you find a way to mess it up and you need another shot.
Absolutely.
Because
like if nothing else, it's also just like, okay, I got a Gangplank in my hand, so now I can get more powder kegs. That's what that Gangplank's gonna be. Is like if you somehow survive this turn, there will be powder kegs.
There will be powder.
There will be powder. More powder.
So the one thing I want to mention too from the stories is there is a mention of, he has this awesome ship already, but he's a pirate, right? So at some point he does take Swain's ship and plays a part in taking the Leviathan, which is an even bigger ship. And totally doesn't fit his aesthetic at all. So you can tell he took it for the sake of pissing off Swain. So Swain is like I wouldn't even say he's one of Gangplank's worst enemies. Gangplank is one of Swain's worst enemies.
Absolutely.
He's like a pain in the neck.
Gangplank doesn't and we'll get into it, but Gangplank doesn't view people as his worst enemies. He just views everyone as an enemy. And it's like, you heard of me? Good.
So now I just want to give a disclaimer before we go into this, because I'll maintain silence. As Hetch goes down this hole that I try to keep him out of. What, this is a partnership, and he has things he has to say. Go ahead, Hetch.
I don't deserve a friend like you. You know that? So we can't get towards the end of our Bilgewater run without bringing up Prowling Cutthroat, the newest darling since Cytherea hit the stage.
Yeah.
And, insert the Toy Story meme of Andy dropping Woody. I don't want to play with you anymore. We're dropping Cytherea, and everyone's talking about Prowling Cutthroat because of that art. And this is a PSA. All right, as someone who is a veteran weeb or anime trash human being, Prowling Cutthroat is not thick. And like you heard it from Hetch first. I'm speaking as Hetch, only for Hetch. All right. This is not a casual statement. This is coming from Hetch. Prowling Cutthroat is not thick. And if you were going to approach any weeb and be like, check out this thick character from
Why?
Runeterra,
Why
you're
would you?
doing it wrong.
Why
all
would you
right.
say something so bold? We're on the internet. Why are you doing
How could you
this?
say something so controversial yet brave?
But talk about the card. I mean, the card's interesting.
So the card is super interesting, and that's going to be the most that I give into this card. It is a 1 mana 1/1, which for a lot of like the good 1-drops, well, quote unquote good 1-drops, a little understated, but it has fear and elusive. So with the fact that it has fear, the fact that it's a 1/1 is moot. Like there's hardly any elusive unit in the game that's going to be able to block this. And bringing in all the plunder effects, and plunder has to work with you dealing damage to the opponent.
Yep.
You get this on the board and it sticks. It's going to be your plunder activation. You're going to get the plunder trigger, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. And this is not anywhere on the lore. Like if I wanted to talk about lore, I'd be talking about Hired Gun, because Hired Gun is clearly a crew member of Miss Fortune's ship, whereas we won't get into it too much in this episode, but the Prowling Cutthroat looks to be one of the Red Scarfs, who is a pirate gang, and the Red Scarfs and Miss Fortune don't get along. I'm playing off of the playbook. This is about Hetch today, and y'all need to know.
His final statement.
Prowling Cutthroat ain't thick. I should not be able to see through the thigh gap if we're talking about thick. And that's it.
It's champion time. I'm so happy you got your moment. That's beautiful.
We've been demonetized.
I know. So our champions, we're starting with Gangplank here, mainly because he doesn't have much lore. It's less of Gangplank's lore being specific to him and having his own story, etc. It's more of a case of he was one of the first ones to get the reformatted lore of the Bilgewater stuff. And they kept it simple because he pops up in so many different stories and he plays a part in what happens in so many different stories. Because he's essentially like the most wanted man in Bilgewater, if not the world, right, of Runeterra. And he has a bravado about it where it's almost like he goes about his business, but he knows that that you're not going to capture him. You're not going to bring him in. You're going to try your best, and it might be a good fight. But at the end of the day, Gangplank's going to win and then get away with it, to the point where in stories it's mentioned that he puts up his own wanted posters and people watch, and he just goes back to his ship and does some dirty shit. It's like there's nothing. You see it a lot in gangster movies, right? Where you have the mob boss who's so above the law that he's eating in like the same restaurant with all the cops. And he's just like, what do you guys? I'm untouchable. What are you going to do? Forget about it.
If we were to have a Runeterra live action, I would want Gangplank played by Denzel Washington. And I would want him to just repeat his performance of American Gangster. Because Gangplank is the guy that's going to be in the restaurant with his family. Well, his crew, but, his family, law enforcement, see someone out in the street. Excuse me a moment. Bam! Well, bang, bang, gang, gang.
Bang, bang, gang, gang.
And sit back down and eat, because he knows you're not going to do anything about it.
Oh, man. That's actually a really good analogy there. But yeah, so, part of where he gets humbled is after, we'll get into the MF story, where she sets him up in a way that involves Twisted Fate and Graves. That distracts him enough for her to blow his ship up. And this kills, I think, all of his crew, if not most, and almost kills him, leaves him scarred up, and gives him the robot arm that we know so well, the metal arm that we know so well, that he got through a few connections that we'll talk about in the future. But yeah, he almost dies, and that puts him in a place where he's no longer the commander of the seas. He's no longer that scourge, because he went from being untouchable to being touched, and then being touched by Miss Fortune, who's proclaimed and trying to establish herself as the ruling power that's more lawful in a sense. Because one of the overarching themes in Bilgewater is not only do people hate scum, but anyone who tries to proclaim themselves as the law in a place that's lawless is like, how dare you? Like, who do you think you are? And that starts this war of pirate gangs, and that's kind of his lore in a nutshell.
Yeah, it is definitely like the traditional city of thieves, but it's more, they are more geared like the American cowboy. It's the ultimate freedom is that we call no one our leader.
Yeah.
We report to no one. We have no boss. We have ultimate freedom. Even though there are people that we will never ever say that to their face.
Yeah.
But we are free.
Yeah. So let's get into the card real quick. He's a 5 cost 5/5. I mean, that's straight up stats, probably understated here because he does have overwhelm. And then when he's summoned the powder keg. We talked about how strong those are. And to flip him, you have to damage the enemy nexus in 5 rounds in the game. So he can be leveled up throughout the game, which makes him even more dangerous. And then once he flips, he has when I'm summoned and the round starts. So it adds the round start bit to that. You can summon a powder keg. And then when he attacks, he deals 1 to all enemies and the enemy nexus, which triggers the powder keg. So he's dealing 2 at least. That's a strong ability, a game ender. And when we talked about the Dreadway, that's why I said, if you can't finish it with the Dreadway, you're finishing it with Gangplank.
Yes. The fact that the Dreadway is bringing the Gangplank out too, like, but if you're playing a Gangplank deck and you're making it to turn 9, Gangplank's going to be leveled up. Like, that's just the nature of how this game works right now in this current meta. There's no way that you're making it to turn 9 without hitting the claws to level up Gangplank. So you've got 2 clocks in hand. Yeah. Let's do it.
So let's talk about Lady Luck now. The redhead everyone can't get enough of.
Lady Luck is smiling. So Miss Fortune, she was not always the figure that Bilgewater looked up to, and she was never aiming to be that when she was younger. So she starts off life as Sarah Fortune. And a big old spoiler, whenever we are talking more about Bilgewater characters from this point on, nobody goes by their real name anymore. Yeah. All right, because the real names aren't cool.
You only go by your SoundCloud rapper name.
Yeah, we are all Hetches now.
We are all Hetches.
Like you pick a different name. But so born as Sarah Fortune, Sarah belonged to a family that was that owned a gunsmith shop run by her mother, Abigail Fortune, which, if anyone has kept up with a lot of more sporting history in the U.S., it's a clever name to name a gunsmith Abigail Fortune. Maybe one person will get that. I'm sorry. I'll keep going. So Abigail teaches Sarah everything she knows about being a gunsmith, and also teaches her how to operate the guns as well, both as far as shooting and maintaining the gun. And they live a relatively peaceful life until she gets an order from a client by the name of Gangplank for specialized custom guns. She fulfills the order, but then during the time that the order was being made, Gangplank's notoriety is exploding. He's going out. He is pissing off everyone in Bilgewater. He's pissing off everyone in Demacia. He's stealing the flagship of the Noxian Empire under the general's nose. And she decides, hey, look, the guns are done, but I'm not giving them to you because you are one of the most dangerous people on the planet, and giving you a better weapon than what you already have is be a detriment to everyone around you. So Gangplank kills her, then kills her husband, and then shoots her daughter too. And the last thing that Sarah remembers is waking up, seeing her house burning down, dragging herself from her bullet wounds, grabbing the guns that her mother made for Gangplank, which Gangplank decided to destroy because Abigail pissed her off. It was like, I don't even want your guns anymore. I don't want your crap anymore. All right, get this out of here. I'm done with all of you. Grabs the guns and swears vengeance on Gangplank, and spends the rest of her life preparing to become a bounty hunter
Mm-hmm.
to hunt down Gangplank and get revenge. And she does everything under the radar.
Yeah.
She keeps a very low profile. The only profile that she keeps high is with her own crew or just being a buxom lass in Bilgewater.
Because he thinks she's dead. And also he doesn't care.
Yeah, that's the big thing is Gangplank doesn't care. Everyone to him is an enemy.
Yeah.
Like he can look at a homeless man on the street and go, well, that guy's trying to kill me. And it's like, what do you mean? He's holding a cup with a sign that says, money for booze, please.
Very honest.
And it looks like he's blind. He's like, yeah, but he's trying to kill me. That's Gangplank in a nutshell. He just knows it, all right? And he's fine with it because he wants you to try to kill him because Gangplank's insane and he's in love with his notoriety. So he doesn't care about this bounty hunter that all of his pirate associates are talking about, because the only thing that they know about this bounty hunter is that it is the greatest misfortune to be in her sights. And
there goes my job.
There goes my job. But that is all anyone knows about Miss Fortune.
Yeah.
And that's how she gets her name, is that it is the most misfortune to be hunted by Miss Fortune. And she builds up her crew, commandeers a ship called the Siren, and ultimately
some good ship names.
forms a plan after years and years of just working up the resources necessary to get Gangplank in a position where she can finally take him out. And there's a lot that goes into it, and it's really not enough to talk about in one episode.
Nah,
so
we'll have a feature episode about all that stuff.
We
may come back.
More pirate talk.
There will be booty in these waters.
Oh my god!
I was going to give more effort, and then I decided not to.
Well, save some booty for the bearded lady.
Oh my gosh! Fate of the game. Oh wait, no, we haven't talked about the card yet. Let's talk about the card.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about the card.
That's why we're here.
This is off of a card game, isn't it? Holy
who would have thought?
So Miss Fortune is a 3-mana 3/3, so pretty understated. Cough cough, 3-mana 4/4 Demacia, cough cough. But she has, when allies attack, deal 1 to battling enemies and the enemy nexus. And she levels up by seeing you attack 4 times. So she does have to be on the board. But when she levels up, she becomes a 4/4 with
Wait, did you say she has to see you? As in the sea?
I'm gone. You can finish this episode. I'm leaving. This is a solo man cast now. So I hate you.
Love you too.
Yeah, so she does have to see you. She has to be on the open waters. But when she levels up, she becomes 4/4 with Overwhelm, and she then deals 1 damage to battling enemies in the enemy nexus 3 times. So there's so many cool interactions.
Do not let her
so
flip.
many cool interactions as far as with that effect, because if there's a powder keg in play, that 1 becomes 2 damage. If she's leveled up, that's dealing 2 damage to everything 3 times. That's 6 damage just for saying I'm attacking.
Yeah.
You just say the words, and it's bam, you take 6.
Yeah.
So she is a bomb. She's not necessarily like a game ender, just because of like that, the level up cost and her mana cost too. It's so low with such a high requirement that it's definitely more mid-rangey. But if she flips, that is basically game over. Because that's damage you can't stop.
Okay. I mean, Miss Fortune, she's definitely, we're about to get into, Fate of the Game, where we're going to talk about aggro in general. And she's just adding to the problem, which a lot of Bilgewater cards are, because of the powder keg and how the extra damage works. Let's just get into it. Fate of the Game.
Fate of the Draven.
Fate of the Draven. So Draven aggro has been a popular deck, and then aggro in general has been talked about since the release, the official release, right? And the claim is that aggro has this way of being able to deal a lot of damage without actually having to connect or to play around their board state, they can just interact with themselves, deal with the damage, and end the game, because 20 life isn't a lot of life in this specific game because of how power levels work. Like, things just end, right? And in a game that doesn't really have a lot of lifesteal effects and tries to avoid those, or if the lifesteal effects do exist, they're very high costed because that's not the game they're going for. It makes it hard to combat these decks, so they become popular. They're easier to run than most decks. In the past, like pre-release, Jinx was usually used, and those decks tend to have more of a tempo feel that added a sense of complexity from the player standpoint, where you had to get that exact amount of damage and it wasn't so easy to do. But now cards like Fervor and things that let you play around interacting with your opponent, it's like aggro decks have this control element to it, which is kind of weird, that just results in you dying. And it's been a cause for concern from a lot of pros, a lot of streamers.
They've definitely lost. The aggro decks that we know from beta have lost that sense of being all in.
Yeah.
Because it used to be that an aggro deck that popped off, it doesn't matter. I don't care what game you're playing, and I don't care what counter tools there are. If an aggro player's got the right hand, they're gonna win.
Yeah,
like that's what their decks are made to do.
Variants.
And it's healthy for a good metagame too, because no one wants to be sitting there for 40 minutes counting all the triggers just to figure out that, oh, I only lose 3 life. Is it my turn now? No one wants that either. Games have to end. So I get that, but this whole bit of an aggro player going from being all in on their top decking and on speed, and then switching it up to just being able to play solitaire. We have to find that balance again.
Yeah. And it does stifle creativity for a lot of the concepts they have, because they've created these interactions that take a bit to build, or to get these cool things to happen. When you have a deck that's just going to roll over you and destroy your life before you have time to do anything with it, that becomes a problem, right? Should they completely nerf any card in this? And this isn't directly all my ideas. This is kind of based on everything I've been reading. Is somebody made a good point that it's not so much the specific cards that need to be nerfed. It's that there's too many damage cards, like direct damage. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, oh man, I don't think we've made a Yu-Gi-Oh! Reference at all in these many episodes. But like I said, we play card games, bro. We play card. So back in the day, early Yu-Gi-Oh! It had a big problem with direct damage. And that's, the burn decks just took over and it stifled. Like, nobody was building Exodia because you had no time. But it stifled the creativity you could have, and people were just trying to burn you out. And what they did was they cut down on those amount of cards. They released more sets where you couldn't directly deal damage like that. You had to jump through some hoops. And that's maybe what's happening, because Riot's talked about their watch list, and I think that's where they're going to head with it, is probably either back off on the amount of damage that's done or add extra stipulations to these cards, because they haven't been shy about that, and I respect that, because a lot of card games tend to get rooted in their decisions, even though it's now more of a digital format that allows you to be shifty and agile. They've been rooted in, we made a decision as for this card is this, and they're not in that position, because they've shown from the beginning that they're willing to change a card completely multiple times for it to work for the community.
And a quick little disclaimer to go off of that for anyone listening to this that is in love with playing your Draven and Jinx aggro right now. This is not a big discouragement either, because they've also shown throughout the entire beta that any nerfs that they're going to do, they're going to approach with caution. They have been very, very cautious as far as trying not to take a nerf bat to anything. Yeah. They still want whatever they're nerfing to be viable. They just want it to be in line. And so I'm definitely looking forward as far as to seeing what nerfs come out, but it's not a thing where you should be discouraged. I'm only discouraged because Ladro still exists. And I will say that this is speaking on behalf of the casuals of Runeterra. If you play Dreadway and Ladros in your decks, I I still love you as a listener, but I don't love you as much as our other listeners. And I think I speak for all of the casuals of Runeterra when I say that you guys are at the bottom of the list.
Of the tier, low tier.
You're low tier listeners.
So obviously pirates. So we know what today is, right, Hetch? I always have something ready for you, and I kind of already did mine.
We know.
So I'll switch it up. We're gonna do our best pirate voice and deliver a line.
Okay.
But for mine, I'm gonna go with this one right here, and I'm gonna say, I told you, if you ever betrayed me, I'll cut you up. All right, you're up, buddy. I think it works. I think like that low, raspy, like that could be a pirate. There's no args or booties, but you know.
I'm just so angry. I'm just so livid with you. I can't get over my anger. I'm shaking. So, yo ho ho in a bottle of rum.
He went with the shanty.
I went with the shanty, boy.
The shanty.
You know, the only reason people want to be a pirate is so that they can go sailing and get drunk. All right, so don't try to tell me anything else.
Oh, send us your best voice clips. Email them to us. We don't have the voicemail set up yet. But that's been another episode of the Casuals of Runeterra. So always, thanks for listening, and we will be back soon with the next episode. And that next episode might be a bit twisted.
Maybe just a little.
Just a little.
Flip cards between my fingers. Twisted. Wait, gotta do the animation.
Gotta do the animation? And there's the lawsuit.
We get sued every episode now. What's going on?
All right. We'll see y'all soon. Adios.
Bye, everybody.